Picture a little girl crying herself to sleep every single night. She doesn't know that one day she'll become the most powerful woman in America. Or the teenager who accidentally killed her best friend in a car crash. She'll carry that guilt all the way to the White House. Today you're going to discover the shocking, tragic, and surprising childhoods of every American First Lady. Stories that have never been fully told. Get ready because some of these will leave you speechless. Eleanor Roosevelt cried alone every night. Her mother called her Granny because she thought the little girl was too ugly. Eleanor was only 8 years old when her beautiful, cruel mother died. 2 years later, her alcoholic father died too. Her favorite brother died right after. At 10 years old, Eleanor was a triple orphan. Her relatives sent her to a freezing boarding school in England where she was finally treated with kindness. But the damage was done. Eleanor grew up believing she was ugly, inadequate, unwanted. That pain would transform the rejected girl into the most influential First Lady in American history. Laura Bush was 17 years old, driving at night on empty Texas roads in 1963. She ran through a stop sign without seeing it. Suddenly another car appeared in the darkness. The impact was devastating. The other driver died instantly. It was Michael Douglas, Laura's classmate. He was her friend. Some say he was her secret boyfriend. Laura never spoke publicly about that night until decades later. The guilt haunted her for life. She became quiet, reserved, obsessed with books. That tragedy shaped who she would become in the White House. Jackie Kennedy grew up listening to screaming. Her parents fought constantly in their New York mansion. Her father, Jack Bouvier, was an alcoholic womanizer. Her mother, Janet, was cold and controlling. When Jackie was 11, her parents divorced scandalously. Divorce was rare and shameful in the 1940s. Jackie learned as a child that appearances mattered more than truth. She escaped into books, horses, and dreams of getting away. That lonely girl would become the most glamorous First Lady in history, but she always protected her pain behind a perfect smile. Michelle Obama's childhood on Chicago's South Side taught her that nothing comes easy. Her father worked at a water treatment plant despite having multiple sclerosis. Every morning he struggled to get dressed, but he never complained. Michelle watched him limp to work every single day. The family lived in a tiny one-bedroom apartment. Michelle and her brother slept in the living room with a divider. She had no privacy, no space of her own. But her parents gave her something money couldn't buy: belief. They told her she was brilliant. They pushed her to excel. Michelle skipped 2nd grade. She was the only black girl in gifted classes. White teachers told her she wasn't college material. She proved them wrong. That South Side girl would become Princeton-educated, Harvard law-trained, and eventually First Lady. Mamie Eisenhower grew up moving constantly. Her father's job kept the family traveling across America. Mamie never had a permanent home as a child. She learned to make friends quickly and adapt to new places. That cheerful flexibility became her trademark. When she married Dwight Eisenhower, a young military officer, she moved 35 times in 37 years. Most women would have crumbled. Mamie thrived. Her nomadic childhood prepared her perfectly for military life. Betty Ford's father died when she was 16. The loss shattered her world. Her father had been her champion, the one who encouraged her dreams of becoming a dancer. After he died, Betty's mother struggled financially. Betty started working as a teenage fashion model to help pay bills. She took dance lessons and dreamed of New York stages. That independence and resilience would define her entire life. Decades later, as First Lady, Betty would publicly discuss her breast cancer and addiction, saving thousands of lives with her honesty. The courage came from that teenage girl who lost her father but refused to lose herself. Dolly Madison was born into a strict Quaker family that believed luxury was sinful. Her childhood home had no decorations, no music, no dancing. Then everything changed. Dolly's father freed all the family's enslaved people and moved them to Philadelphia. It was a moral choice, but it destroyed them financially. The business failed. Dolly's father fell into depression and died. At 21, Dolly married a lawyer. Within 2 years, her husband and infant son died in a yellow fever epidemic. Dolly was a widow at 23 with one surviving child and no money. Most women would have disappeared into poverty. Instead, Dolly transformed herself. She abandoned strict Quaker rules, started wearing colorful dresses, and became the most celebrated hostess in America. That traumatized girl became the first lady who saved George Washington's portrait when the British burned the White House. Lady Bird Johnson's mother died when she was only 5 years old. Her name was Minnie, and she fell down the stairs while pregnant. Lady Bird never forgot finding her mother's body. Her father, a wealthy but emotionally distant man, couldn't handle raising children alone. He sent Lady Bird to live with relatives. She grew up feeling abandoned, wandering alone through East Texas woods and fields. She found comfort in wildflowers, trees, and silent beauty. That lonely child would become the first lady who launched America's beautification movement, planting millions of flowers and protecting natural landscapes. She was trying to heal the world that had hurt her so young. Mary Todd Lincoln grew up in privilege and chaos. Her family owned enslaved people and lived in a Kentucky mansion. But Mary's mother died when she was 6. Her father remarried quickly to a woman who had 9 more children. The house became crowded and tense. Mary was brilliant and educated, unusual for girls then, but emotionally unstable. She had violent mood swings and uncontrollable tempers. Some historians believe she had bipolar disorder. Her childhood trauma, combined with genetic mental illness, would explode during her years as First Lady. She witnessed her husband's assassination, lost 3 of her 4 sons, and eventually was institutionalized. That privileged Kentucky girl carried wounds that never healed. Rosalind Carter's father died when she was 13. Her mother became a dressmaker to support 4 children. Rosalind, the oldest, helped raise her siblings while excelling in school. She cleaned houses, did laundry, and managed the family budget as a teenager. In Tiny Plains, Georgia, everyone knew their business. There was no privacy, no escape. Rosalind learned discipline, responsibility, and the exhausting work of survival. She also learned never to show weakness. That steel would define her as First Lady. She attended cabinet meetings, advised Jimmy on foreign policy, and became the most politically active First Lady since Eleanor Roosevelt. The girl who held her family together held the White House together too. Nancy Reagan grew up without her mother. Her mother, Edith, was a stage actress who toured constantly. Nancy lived with an aunt in Maryland, rarely seeing her mother for years. She felt abandoned and unwanted. When her mother finally remarried a wealthy doctor and brought Nancy to Chicago, Nancy adopted her stepfather's name and pretended her childhood loneliness never happened. She rewrote her own history. That need for control and perfection followed her to the White House. Nancy became obsessed with astrology, trying to control fate. She fiercely protected Ronald Reagan after his assassination attempt. That abandoned girl never stopped trying to prevent loss. Barbara Bush's mother was beautiful and cold. She criticized Barbara's weight, her looks, her intelligence. Nothing Barbara did was good enough. That emotional abuse shaped Barbara's entire personality. She became tough, sarcastic, self-deprecating. She protected herself with humor and low expectations. When her 3-year-old daughter Robin died of leukemia in 1953, Barbara's hair turned white from grief. She was only 28. That loss, combined with childhood emotional neglect, made Barbara fierce about loyalty and family. As First Lady, she championed literacy because reading had been her childhood escape from a mother who never loved her enough. Hillary Clinton's father was terrifying. Hugh Rodham ruled their suburban Chicago home with anger and impossible standards. He criticized everything Hillary did. She brought home straight A's. He asked why she wasn't number 1. She won awards. He said she was getting arrogant. Her mother, Dorothy, had been abandoned by her own parents as a child and knew cruelty intimately. She pushed Hillary to be tougher, stronger, never to show weakness. Hillary learned that emotions were dangerous. She learned to fight. In 4th grade, a bully hit her. Hillary's mother locked her outside and told her to go hit back or don't come home. Hillary hit back. That became her strategy for life. Work harder. Fight meaner. Never cry. That combative girl would become the first woman to win a major party presidential nomination, but she could never escape the damage of a father who was never satisfied. Jacqueline Bouvier Kennedy Onassis spoke French before she spoke full English sentences. Her mother pushed her into horse shows and competitions as a toddler. Jackie learned to perform, to win, to be perfect. When she was 11, her father's alcoholism and affairs destroyed her parents' marriage. The divorce was a scandal. Jackie's mother remarried a wealthy man, and suddenly Jackie had step-siblings and a new life. She learned early that nothing was permanent. People left. Families shattered. The only things you could control were your appearance and your dignity. Jackie would carry that lesson through JFK's assassination, raising her children in grief, and her controversial marriage to Aristotle Onassis. The girl who lost her father emotionally never fully trusted anyone again. Bess Truman grew up in Independence, Missouri with a dark secret. Her father, David Wallace, was an alcoholic who committed suicide when Bess was 18. He shot himself in the bathtub. The scandal devastated the family. Suicide was considered shameful, proof of moral weakness. Bess never spoke about it publicly. She became intensely private, almost reclusive as First Lady. She hated Washington, hated publicity, hated being in the spotlight. That trauma made her the most invisible First Lady of the 20th century. She was protecting the wounded girl inside who had found her father's body. Edith Wilson grew up in Virginia during Reconstruction. Her family had been wealthy before the Civil War but lost everything. Edith's childhood was defined by humiliation and poverty pretending to be dignity. Her family taught her that appearances were everything. She had almost no formal education, just finishing 2 years of school. But she was beautiful, charming, and determined to marry well. Her first husband was a wealthy jeweler. When he died, Edith inherited his business and learned to survive alone. Then she met President Woodrow Wilson, a widower, and charmed him completely. When Wilson had a stroke in 1919, Edith essentially ran the country for 17 months, making her the most powerful unelected woman in American history. That poor Virginia girl became a shadow president. Florence Harding had the most scandalous childhood. Her father, Amos Kling, was the richest, meanest man in Marion, Ohio. He physically and emotionally abused Florence. As a teenager, Florence rebelled by getting pregnant by a local man. Her father disowned her. Florence raised her son alone, divorced her first husband, and started working in her father's bank despite his fury. Then she met Warren Harding, a newspaper editor, and married him. Her father didn't speak to her for 15 years. Florence ran Harding's newspaper, managed his political career, and pushed him all the way to the White House. That abused, abandoned teenage mother became First Lady and one of the most politically influential women of the 1920s. From orphans to survivors, from trauma to triumph, every First Lady's childhood shaped the woman she would become. The little girls who cried alone, who buried parents, who survived abuse and accidents, who learned early that life was cruel. Those girls grew into the women who stood beside presidents, shaped history, and proved that survival is its own form of power.